Okay, this is Chapter 1, Lesson 1.2, Complex Fractions and Unit Rates. Okay, the first problem we have is 2 divided by 2/3. So you have to remember the definition of a a complex fraction. Okay, a complex fraction is a fraction, okay, that has a fraction in the numerator, the denominator, or both. Okay, so it's fraction within a fraction, fractions within a fraction. Okay, so in this case we have our steps. So the first step is to identify the numerator and the denominator. So we have here our 2, right? That is the numerator. And 2/3 is the denominator. So this is saying 2 divided by 2/3. And that's what the next step is. The next step is to actually write it out as you would say it. 2 divided by 2/3. Now before we move on, okay, basically we're dividing fractions here. Okay, but we have a whole number. Now we need to change that whole number into a fraction. And in order to do that, we have to put that number over 1. So we can just redo that here. Okay, so we're going to change that 2 to 2 over 1, change into a fraction, divided by 2/3. Now, what do we do when we divide fractions? Keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. Okay, so I'm actually going to go up here for that. Okay, so we keep the first fraction the same, so 2 over 1 stays as 2 over 1. We change the division sign, okay, to multiplication, and then we flip the second fraction, okay, to its reciprocal. So instead of 2/3, it's going to be 3/2, or 3 over 2. Now, when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. So we have 2 times 3 over, right, 2 times 3 over 1 times 2. Okay, which comes out to be 2 times 3, which is 6. 1 times 2, which is 2. Okay, 6 over 2, or 6 divided by 2, right, is actually, comes out evenly 3. So our answer is the whole number 3. So 2 divided by 2/3 is 3. Here's our next problem. 2/3 divided by 7. Okay, so the first step, identify the numerator, identify the denominator. So our numerator is 2/3, the whole fraction, 2/3. And our denominator is the whole number 7. So this is 2/3 divided by 7, and that's our next step, to write it out as we say it. 2/3 divided by 7. And just like before, we have to change our whole number, okay, into a fraction, and the way that we do that is we put it over 1. 2/3 divided by 7 over 1. Okay, because 7 and 7 over 1 are the same exact things. Okay, in order to divide fractions, we keep, change, flip. Keep the first fraction, so we got 2/3. Change division to multiplication, and flip the second fraction. So instead of 7 over 1, we have 1 over 7. To multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. 2 times 1, right, which is 2. 3 times 7, which is 21. Now we simplify. In this case, we actually can't. Okay, so that's our final answer. So 2/3 divided by 7 is 2 over 21. Here's our next problem. 1/3 divided by 1/4. So this one's just a little different, okay, just because there's a fraction in the numerator and denominator, but it's still the same exact steps, and I think that's probably a little more easy. Okay, so 1/3 is our numerator, 1/4 is our denominator. Next thing we do is we write it out as we say it. 1/3, right, 1/3 divided by 1/4. Now, all we have to do is keep, change, flip. That's how we divide fractions. Keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. Multiply straight across. 1 times 4 is 4. 3 times 1 is 3. Now, in this case, right, 4 divided by 3 is not going to be an even number like 6 over 2 was before. 6 divided by 2. So, in this case, we have an improper fraction. Now, in order to change that to a mixed number, we have to divide. Top in, bottom out. Top in, bottom out. 3 goes into 4 once. 1 times 3, 3. 4 minus 3, 1. Okay, so since we're working with fractions, okay, we're going to have our answers in fraction form as well. So we have our whole number, okay, which is at the 1, which is on top. That's the big number in the front. We have 1 as the remainder. So it's going to be 1 over 3. Goes clockwise. So our answer is 1 and 1/3. So 1/3 divided by 1/4 is 1 and 1/3. Next problem, we have 7.5 divided by 9. Okay, this might look a little freaky, but it's not. Okay, so first we identify our numerator and denominator. So our numerator is 7.5, and our denominator is 9. Again, we write it out as we say it. 7.5 divided by 9. Okay, so before we do our keep, change, flip, we have to do a few things. So the 7.5, we can't leave it as a mixed number. We have to change it into an improper fraction. So in order to do that, okay, we have to multiply the denominator by the whole number. So 2 times 7 is 14. We take that product and we add that to the numerator, which in this case is 1. So 14 plus 1 is 15. And we keep the same denominator in the fraction, so it's 2, so 15 over 2. Okay, divided by, now our 9, the whole number, to make that into a fraction, we put it over 1, so that changes to 9 over 1. Okay, so we had to put them in different forms, but it's still the same thing. 7.5 is the same exact thing as 15 over 2, and 9 is the same thing as 9 over 1. Now you keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip. Okay, so get a different color. I'll go over here. So we're going to keep 15 over 2. We're going to change, and then we're going to flip. Then we multiply straight across. 15 times 1 is 15. 2 times 9 is 18. Now we look, okay, and we see if we can simplify. In this case, we can. We can simplify by 3. They both can be divided by 3, right? 15 divided by 3 is 5. And 18 divided by 3 is 6. That cannot be simplified any further, so that is our final answer. So 7.5 divided by 9 is 5/6. Next is a word problem. And whenever we have word problems, we need to make sure that we find the important pieces of information, underline it, circle it, box it, whatever you want to do. Okay, so Larissa is making pillows for her life skills class. She bought 2.5 yards of fabric. Her total cost was $15. What was the cost per yard? Okay, go back to find some important piece of information. 2.5 yards. Okay, she bought 2.5 yards of fabric. Okay, and that cost $15. And they want to know how much it cost. What was the price per yard? Whenever you see the word per, right, that means 1 per yard. If you remember, okay, miles per hour, right? How many miles in 1 hour, per yard. So now, since we know what we want to have 1 of, right, when we make our ratio, that's what we put in the denominator right away. So if we want 1 yard, we put yards in the denominator, okay, and we're comparing yards with money, so we put our money in the numerator. Now let's fill in. Money was what? $15. And yards was 2.5. Now, this looks just like a problem that we did prior. Maybe a little different, flipped, right? But basically, and I'll just rewrite it without the dollar sign, this is a complex fraction. Because this is saying 15 divided by 2.5. Because if you really think about it, we want 1 yard, right? We have 2.5 yards. If we want 1 yard, right, we want to go from 2.5 yards to 1 yard, what do you divide 2.5 by to get to 1? 2.5. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top, right? 15 divided by 2.5. Look, 15 divided by 2.5. Same exact thing. So now let's rewrite that. So first step, we identify our numerator and denominator. 15 is our numerator. 2.5 is our denominator. Okay, and again, we're going to write it out as we say it, and even if when we have it over here. 15 divided by, right, 2.5. Now before we do anything, our keep, change, flip, we have to change them into different forms. So the 15 is the whole number, right? Now turn that into a fraction. You put that number over 1. Keep dividing, right? Now we have to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. So 2 times 2, right, is 4, plus the numerator 1 is 5. Okay, that goes over 2, right, because that's the denominator. We keep the same denominator. Okay, so now we have our new forms. So now we keep, change, flip. So keep the first fraction, 15 over 1, change to multiplication, and, keep and then change and then flip, right? Instead of 5 over 2, we have 2 over 5, 2/5. Multiply straight across. 15 times 2 is 30, and 1 times 5 is 5. Now, yes, this is an improper fraction, right, because the number on top is bigger, but what is 30 divided by 6? It's an even, I always do that. 30 divided by 5, right, is what? An even 6. Okay, so what was the question asking? It was asking, what was the cost per yard? How much was it? $6 per yard. So for 1 yard of fabric, it was $6. Okay, here's another one. Stefan entered a canoe race. He rowed 3.5 miles in a half hour. What is his average speed in miles per hour? There we go. So first let's go back and let's look at the important information. Okay, he rowed 3.5 miles. Okay, so we're comparing miles in half hour. Okay, hour. Now, let's see what the question is asking. What is his average speed in miles per hour? What do we want 1 of? We want 1 hour per hour, 1 hour. So when we make our ratio, we want 1 hour, so we put our hours in the denominator, and then we're comparing that with miles, right? Miles in the numerator. Now let's fill in. Hours, right? We had what? Half hour. Miles, 3.5. Okay, so again, this is a complex fraction, and remember, if you think about it, if we want to go from, okay, this is miles and this is hours, if we want to go from a half hour to 1 hour, what number divided by a half gives you 1? Itself, right? So a half. Divide by a half, whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Isn't that the same thing? 3.5 divided by a half, 3.5 divided by 1/2. Same thing. So now let's rewrite it on a different page. Okay, so we have our complex fraction. So first step, identify numerator, identify denominator. 3.5 is our numerator, right? 1/2 is our denominator. We're going to write it out just like we say it. 3.5 divided by 1/2. Okay, now we look at this. Okay, we have 3.5. We have a mixed number. We got to change that to an improper fraction. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So we have 7 over 2 divided by, and 1/2 we just keep as 1/2. Okay, to divide fractions, we keep, change, flip. Okay, so we're going to keep, right? We're going to keep our first fraction, keep, change, flip. Multiply across, 7 times 2 is 14. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, now again, that's an improper fraction. 14 divided by 2. What's 14 divided by 2? 7. So what was the question asking? It's how many miles per hour? What was his average speed? 7 miles per hour. 7 miles for 1 hour. And that is your answer.